Today we are setting up CloudPanel. So this is a CloudPanel tutorial and CloudPanel review. Now, CloudPanel version 2 came out really recently, so I really wanted to try out this version. The reason I wanted to try it out, number one, it has very nice one-click installers for WordPress, obviously, which we use a lot on the channel. Also, you can do PHP sites, static HTML sites, Python sites, and Node.js. I know a few of you in the comments have been asking me, how can we set up a Node.js? This one has it right out of the box, so that is a pretty cool little feature. But very easy to set up different kinds of websites on here. The other thing I really like in version 2 here, you've got ARM64 support. So that means Oracle free tier. You can use your 4 free CPUs on this ARM64 based setup. So Ubuntu 22 is what we're going to use today. It also supports Debian 11, so you can choose your OS, but really like that ARM support. You can run very good free servers through that Oracle free tier, which we're going to do. I'm going to set up a WordPress site, do a performance test. The performance is obviously really good. We've shown that on the channel plenty of times. On Oracle's free tier, you can get very good WordPress performance. And besides setting up on Oracle, I just use the instructions under the other here for the CloudPanel documentation, but they do have one-click installers integrated in several popular providers. On the channel, we really like Vultr, Ocean and Hetzner. Some of these others, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, are a bit more expensive, but these cheaper ones, Ocean, Hetzner, and Vultr. For example, if you go into Vultr, set up a new compute, there'll be an option for a one-click CloudPanel install. So you can do this much more simply than I'm going to do today. I'm going to go with these other things, but the install method is basically just update the server, run a script. It's only a couple of commands. So obviously, all the commands are in my blog. Check the description for the link. You can just cut and paste everything I did today as we set this up. Other features I like, inbuilt file manager. So you can edit files, copy paste, whatever you like through the panel. No need to go through FileZilla or other FTP clients. This is very user-friendly. You can get to your Phpmyadmin through the panel as well, like I'm showing you here. What else is there? The stack here is pure NGINX. I'm using MySQL, but it supports MariaDB as well. And it's got Redis installed here by default as well. So a really nice performance setup straight out of the box. All right, so I'm quite excited to test this out, CloudPanel version 2. I'm going to run this on my Oracle Cloud free tier account. So you can try this out for free as well. If you go to oracle.com/free, get a free tier account, you can set this up just like I'm about to do. So if all this sounds interesting, then keep watching. All right, from our Oracle Cloud account, we are using a free tier account here. We're going to be under our Get Started tab and scrolling down to create a VM instance. Okay, I'm going to call this one CloudPanel Demo, and let's set up this shape and image. So we want to use Ubuntu here. So let's go for Ubuntu. We can use the latest one here. We can use Canonical Ubuntu 22.04 here. So let's go with that one. If we actually check CloudPanel requirements, it'll run on Ubuntu 22.04 and Debian 11 are the requirements. So either one of those is fine. I'll use Ubuntu for this demo. And we're going to go with our Ampere ARM-based processor. So I'm just going to use one CPU, 6 gigabytes of memory. It should be fine for what I'm doing here. And then we want to do an SSH key. So we can just paste in an SSH key here. I'm using Windows, so I like to use Putty to manage all my SSH keys. So you can get that at putty.org. I'm going to go ahead and generate a new SSH key for this one. So Putty comes with Putty key generator, PuttyGen. We can click generate here and just wiggle the mouse in the gray space here, and that will create our key once this green line hits the end there. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and save this key. We don't need to add a password if it's a private computer. I'll just call it IdeaSpot here and IdeaSpot here, IdeaSpot, so that's the public key, so I'll call it IdeaSpot pub. And we want to copy this key out. Make sure you highlight all this and copy this. And we're going to paste that into our instance creation here. Make sure you've got all that pasted in properly. And we can actually specify boot size, custom drive size if we want to. The default is 50, which is going to be fine, but you can tweak that if you want, because you have up to 200 gigabytes on your free tier if you want to use it all up, or you can create multiple instances with smaller volumes, up to you. But I think that pretty much is all we need. We can go ahead and click create. One thing I noticed while I'm waiting for this to spin up is that when I'm using Ubuntu 22, I needed to actually download a new copy of Putty because there's the updates help it connect. I was having some problems connecting to Ubuntu 22 until I updated Putty. So just keep that in mind if you're using an older version of Putty. Might be the right time to download an update. Anyway, it looks like this is provisioning. We've got our new public IP address. So let's go ahead and point a domain over to this IP address while we're waiting for this to set up. So I've got my domain idea test site over here I got this on Namecheap. We're going to add some records in here. So a record, we're going to point the to the IP address there. I've already got the CNAME record with www pointing to idea test site, so you can add that one as well. That's the CNAME record, and I'm going to add one for the panel as well. So let's just call it cloud. Let's just call it cloud panel, and point that to the IP address. Seems good, but that can be really whatever you like. That's how we're going to access the panel, and that is going to be the main website or whatever app we set up on our server. So if we head back to our instances, this is still provisioning. And after about a minute or so, it's going to change to green and running. We can go ahead and connect to this instance. All right, so to connect with this, with Putty, we just put in our IP address there, and we're going to use Ubuntu as our username at the IP address. And we are going to save this as CloudPanel. Panel looks good. We also need to add that SSH key. So under connection SSH here, under auth, there we go. We can browse for that private key that we saved earlier. So that private key there, IdeaSpot private key, is what we created earlier. We want to go back to the session there and save that again. So it's got the private key. Now we can go ahead and open our session. Just go ahead and click accept there. This should go ahead and connect. There we go. All right, just made that font a little bit bigger so you guys can read it more clearly. And I'm going to change the super user. So there we go. And let's go ahead and install this thing. So on our CloudPanel documents, we are going to be installing CloudPanel. The first thing we want to do is do update and install the required packages. So this is the command here. We can just click the copy button here. I'll put all these commands on my blog in the description. So check the description if you just want to copy and paste stuff. So once you copy that, you can right click in your Putty window. It'll paste the command in, press enter, and this will start our setup. So I'm going to assume this is going to take a few minutes. So I'm just going to pause it and come back when we get the next input. And we've just been prompted to restart some services. So if you get this, we can just press enter for OK on here. And this will go ahead and continue installing. And this looks like it's done its update and its install. So this looks all good. Now we can do our next step. And this is to run the actual installer here. So there's a few options. The default one, MySQL 8, we run this command here. But you can actually choose MariaDB 10.8 or 10.6, depending on your preference. If you're using Ubuntu, if you're using Debian, you've got these choices. So there's a few different choices for databases, but let's just go with this MySQL for the demo here. And back to Putty, let's go ahead and run that install command. Just right click, paste that in, enter, and away it goes. So I'm going to assume this takes a little while. So actually, while we're doing this, why don't we set up the ports that we're going to need? So back on our instance for our cloud panel, we're going to go to our virtual cloud network here, and then we can go to our subnet. And then we can go to our default security list. So this is where we can add our ingress rules. We should have port 22 by default is open, but we're going to need some more ports to run CloudPanel. So our source seed IDR, we put 0.0.0.0/0 there. It'll be TCP. And the destination ports that we need are these ones. So 443.80, those are our SSL and our web ports. And we've got the panel port is on 8.443. And then optionally, you can add FTP ports on here as well. So 20 and 21. And the passive ports that CloudPanel uses are these ones here, 49152 to 65534. So if you're not using FTP, you don't need those last ones, but you definitely need those three there. I'm going to put CloudPanel in here as my description. And we're going to add that on. So you should have at least these ports on your Oracle Cloud security rules here. So this installer is still ticking away. So I'm just going to pause it and wait until this is done. And we can continue. So after about 5 or 10 minutes, this looks like it's installed all just fine. CloudPanel is complete, so we can now access our server on the IP address on port 8443. So let's go ahead and try that out. So I've just tried this and I'm getting a timeout error, so I might just do a reboot and see if that fixes it. Sometimes after installing new stuff, it's just good to do a reboot, and a lot of issues seem to resolve themselves, so let's just try that out. All right, so after rebooting, this looks better. So we're getting on our IP address on port 843, we're getting an SSL warning. We can go to advanced and proceed to this. We're going to set up our domain now. First, we get prompted to create an admin. So just fill this out, username, nice strong password, agree to the terms and create the user. And now we can log in with the name and the password that we just created. Click login, there we go. That looks all good. So this is a nice clean looking panel. We can add websites here, but the first thing I want to do is set up a proper URL for our panel. So earlier in the tutorial, we might remember that we set up cloud as a subdomain here, pointing to our IP address. Let's set this up, cloud, cloud.ideatestsite, and let's point our domain over to this server here. So we can go to admin area there, and under settings here, this is where we can do it. So I'm going to put this in here, cloud idea test site. That is the domain that I'm using for this test, but yours obviously goes in here. We can go ahead and click save. But before we click save, let's just make sure that this domain is actually pointing to our IP. So I'm going to dnschecker.org, and I'm just going to run an A check on cloud idea test site and click search. This is all hitting the IP just fine because we want to make sure that's working properly before we try and save that, is because it's going to try and issue a Let's Encrypt certificate. If your domain's not pointed over yet, the Let's Encrypt certificate won't work properly. So just make sure that is all pointed over correctly before we go ahead and run our custom domain here. So let's save that in. This does take a second, so just be patient here. So that looks okay. It says CloudPanel custom domain has been saved. So we should be able to access our panel on https cloudideatest.site. So let's go ahead and try that. So what I found was trying to access Cloud Idea Test site on here, it did still give me this SSL warning. So I think just restarting Chrome, restarting your browser clears this up. So closing Chrome and reopening, let's go back to that URL, cloud.ideatest.site. We can log in now using our username and password that we set up during the install. So there we go. We can log in and this should be all good now. I might save that into my passwords. We can start adding sites here. We can see we've got our Let's Encrypt certificate on our panel working just fine. So really nice looking panel so far. Let's see how it works. First thing I might do is try adding a site. All right, so this opens up a menu where we can choose 5 options here. We can have WordPress site, PHP site, a Node.js site, a static HTML site, and a Python site. So straight away, I really like this. I know a lot of you like building WordPress sites, but a few of you have been asking about doing Node.js, doing PHP, even doing static sites. So all this is here ready to go. So let's try out a WordPress site to start with here. And we just have to fill this out. So I am using Idea Test Site. I already pointed the DNS over early in the tutorial. So I've got the @ pointed to my IP address, and I've got the www CNAME record pointing to ideatest.site. So that should all be ready to go. There's a nice little password generator on here, which is pretty cool. But yeah, just fill this out, and when you're ready to go, click create. So that takes about a minute. You'll get your credentials for your WordPress site here. Now this is good because it gives you your database password as well here, as well as your username and password for your WordPress site. So you can go ahead and copy all these, keep that somewhere safe so you can use those later. But let's go ahead and log into our WordPress dashboard. So we can hit back to sites here. And if we hit manage here, what does that give us? So I've got a few options here. This is the settings menu here. If we scroll down, we actually can change PHP version. By default, it looks like it's on 8. We can change our upload file size. By default, that's 64. If you were importing a large website as you were starting out, you might increase that. If you wanted to import a large backup from another website, for example. But yeah, you can tweak these to suit, change the memory limit depending on how much memory you want to allocate there. So that looks pretty cool. There's a file manager, which is nice. You can access all your files like that. If we look under SSH and FTP, we can see we can set up SSH users and FTP users for the site. So that's nice to have right here in our panel. SSL is probably the one we want to look at straight away because the certificates by default looks like we've got a self-signed certificate. So I might see if we can actually add a Let's Encrypt certificate, or you can import custom certificates as well. So that's really nice. You might want to import a Cloudflare certificate, but let's do the Let's Encrypt certificate, and it'll say a DNS record pointing to the server is required. So make sure you've got your DNS pointed over. We obviously did that much earlier in the tutorial. Let's go ahead, click create and install. See if this will work. I've got a little timer ticking away there. And by doing that, we've now got a Let's Encrypt certificate there. It says installed yes, and it's changed the self-sign one to no. So now we should actually have our idea test site working with a Let's Encrypt certificate. Doesn't look like it's working just yet. Sometimes that does take a second. What I might do, let's reload one more time. I might just restart the browser and see if it'll work in that case, because I think that was helpful last time we checked. All right, so I've just restarted my Chrome browser here, come back into the panel, and sure enough, now it is working okay. So just wait a couple of minutes and try restarting your browser if you can't get that Let's Encrypt certificate to show, because as long as you are looking at it here and the encrypt certificate is installed, it should be okay. It just can take a second for it to appear on your browser there. Anyway, let's have a look at our WordPress dashboard. So let's go to Phpmyadmin, and we can log in with the username and the password that we selected when we created the website. So just pop those in there and log in. It looks all good. WordPress 6, awesome. All right, so from here you can just go ahead, appearance and themes, go and install a theme, start building a site. You could install a migration plugin and bring in an existing site as well. So this is all fairly straightforward in WordPress. I just did a quick performance check using WP Performance Tester, and the performance is on par with anything else that I've used on the Oracle free tier. This is as good as most cheap VPSs. Not quite as fast as Vultr High Frequency, but it's in the ballpark of most cheap VPSs, most shared hosting. It's actually better than most shared hosting. This is well faster than the industry average actually for WordPress hosting, but yeah, still for free. This is quite excellent. Running it through PageSpeed Insights. This is just the default site. No performance issues obviously here, running quite well. I have tested faster VPSs on the channel like Vultr High Frequency and Linode. Hetzner can do a little bit better, quicker than this one, but this is still totally decent for a free service. The actual server stack that it's running here is just MySQL and pure NGINX, so no Apache running here. You've got Redis on here by default as well, so you'd expect the performance to be pretty good here. The other thing I should mention is you can get to Phpmyadmin. If you go to your cloud address there and go /PMA for Phpmyadmin, you can actually log in. You'll get hit with a login thing. You can use the database username and password to get into your database here. All right, so I'll put those credentials in and let's try this out. Awesome. So you can go into your WordPress database and you can work on modifying anything you like here as well. So in terms of conclusions, CloudPanel, I really liked it. Pretty simple to set up, no major issues, nice, clean, easy to use panel here. Very good for running WordPress sites. Also, you've got that option of running just basic HTML, PHP. You could do Node.js or Python as well. They had easy installers for those. Quite good documentation as well. I really liked they've got set up here for other, so I use this other method to do Oracle, but they've got one-click installers that are supported on a lot of the popular ones that I use, Vultr, Hetzner, DigitalOcean. Those are on here. You can just point and click, one-click installers on those systems as well, so that's really nice. I didn't really like the requirement for 2 GB of RAM because a lot of the cheap ones we like on Linode, Vultr and DigitalOcean come with 1 GB of RAM, those $5 and $6 value options. You need 2 GB for this system, but this makes it perfect for the 24 GB that you get for free on Oracle, along with that ARM compatibility. So this is another panel that has come up with that ARM64 compatibility, which I quite like when I'm trying to use it for free on that Oracle free tier. So that's really cool. So this was purely a web server. If you're looking for a mail server as well, this doesn't really have any mail features, so that might be a drawback in comparison, particularly to things like CyberPanel, Hestia CP, Plesk. Those will give you some mail options. This one is just for serving websites. So I mean, a little bit of a disadvantage, but I really like keeping my mailboxes and my mail servers separate from my web server anyway. So I think this is good, but a few of you might want those mail features included. So that's one thing to look out for as well. But overall, I mean, for a free panel, I don't think you can go too far wrong. Pure NGINX, good performance, and free. So CloudPanel, really quite liked it. Let me know if you've tried it out, what your experience has been like in the comments, or what other systems have you like to use, particularly on the free tier of Oracle. I'm always interested in your experiences over there. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.